It's happening, you guys. The gears are turning. Everybody is joining the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson train. That is right. In the past 2 chapters, because of Rox's reveal in his debut, everybody believes that he is top of the verse. And I don't blame them. Some people call it recency bias. I think that is, pretty normal. People see a new character. They see all the attacks. They see who he has in his crew. They see the Conqueror's Haki, the clashes, and they're like, yo, this guy is top 1. Is that wrong? Not exactly. I think that is simply because we have not seen a lot from other characters who are in that realm, right? We haven't seen Roger fight. We haven't seen Mihawk fight. We haven't seen Shanks fight. Hell, is Dragon even a part of the story anymore? These are all things that are still left in the dark for now. So today, we're going to look through a couple of polls and just see how the general populace feels about Rox compared to other key characters. And also, we're going to dive into some random side polls. I kind of forgot what I held in the past week. Heads up, though, for the next poll video, come next week, we're going to have a lot of Skypiea questions, because I'm currently in Skypiea, and my god, I forgot how crazy Anel and his gang actually were. So I'm going to hold a lot of polls there, a lot of debates. So, with that being said, hopping into the first poll I held, it is a simple question, a profound question even, but I ask, who is the strongest character in a fight? Who'd be able to win each and or most matchups? And look at this. Like I said, everybody is loving the new Jumanji movie. They love Black Adam. They're voting for Rox. He is dominating the poll. There's not even a close second. Second place is Roger, and what is he? Almost 40% behind? That is crazy. Roger is the king of the pirates, yet we're giving Rox all the flowers. I get it, like I said. Rox is right now the new big shiny object in front of us, so I get why people are flocking to him. And plus, it doesn't help that what Sengoku told us was that it took Garp and Roger to take down the Rox pirates. And it's like, okay, was it a straight 2v1? We're not too sure, right? Because there are crews included in that. Garp has Bogard. Roger has damn near 20 crew members plus Scopper and Rayleigh. And then you look at the Rox pirates, and it's not just Rox. It's Whitebeard, it's Shiki, it's Stussy, it's Wang Ji, Captain John, and etc. It is hard to imagine what these final matchups were truly like. And then we have the wild factor with Emu being able to just instantly possess somebody. Who's to say Gunka wasn't there at God Valley and Emu took over and turned the tides of battle? There's Garling, the supreme commander of the Holy Knights. There's Saturn was there even. It feels like a straight up free-for-all. It is really hard to deduce what actually happened during that battle. But because all we have to go off of is what Sengoku said, I don't exactly blame people for thinking that Rox is an absolute menace, because it took Garp and Roger teaming up to take him down. Also, one thing I want to throw out there is that while that is what we got, we know that it did not start like that. Because Garp did not care about Rox Dizabek, right? Garp heard about God Valley, he heard about the treasure of Hachinosu being stolen, and that Rox is on the move, and Garp was sleeping. Garp was chilling at a poolside beach. A poolside resort. I'm not too sure which one it was. It kind of eludes me. Beach, resort, could be one of the same. But Garp was hanging out. Garp only made a move once he heard that Roger was going. Garp's initial target was Roger. And then, somewhere along the way, that is when Garp decided to help take down Rox Dizabek instead, and he teamed up with Roger. So what happened there? Like I said, everything is still really hazy. But here we have it. These are the poll results, and I do like what Brago said. I talked to Brago about who is stronger crew-wise, the Rox Pirates or the Roger Pirates, and I believe he said the Roger Pirates. He was voting for the underdog there. And he dropped a line that I can't even really dispute. But he said that when Roger and his crew get a full-fledged backstory, when we see them actually fight, then the narrative might change on this, right? For now, we think the Rox Pirates are the strongest, the pinnacle of the verse. But the minute we see characters from Roger's crew show out who are not Roger, Scopper, and Rayleigh, then things might change, right? If we see Millet Pine going crazy, if we see Jackson Banner destroying Shiki, yeah, the narrative is going to switch up a little bit. And it's just one of those things, we are only going off of the information we have currently. A lot of things are still up for debate, speculation, and we will still get more story beats as time goes on. All right, that is how I always see it. When it comes to the debate of who's the strongest character in X scenario, I personally am pretty unbiased. You know, obviously I have characters that I enjoy more, characters that I like, but I do not let that sway me in who is stronger, typically. And that is simply because I like all characters, minus Dragon. Dragon I have a bone to pick with, but most characters I do enjoy. So if you were to tell me that one day Shanks is gonna destroy Mihawk and he's the top of the verse, I'd agree with you. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. If you tell me that Mihawk is gonna be the one to take down Shanks once and for all, he's gonna take down that one-armed has-been despite Mihawk saying that he does want to fight him, cool. Yeah, sure. Roger's the strongest swordsman before Mihawk was around, and even today, Roger would destroy him in a battle. Okay. I'm personally unfazed. Am I boring? Am I milquetoast? Am I a fence-sitter? Sure. But I am honestly just a guy that kind of likes all these characters, and I'm kind of easygoing. So, just wanted to throw that out there. That's my own personal opinion. If I had to, like, rank my favorite characters on this list, number one, I'd pick Mihawk for sure. I just love his style, man. The lone wolf. He's got the goth girl. He's got the black blade. I think he's so freaking cool. Second, of course, Shanks. Third, I need the color scheme of Rocks before I can decide if I like him more than Roger. But for now, I put Roger and then Rocks. I know, it's a little bit silly, but there's just something about Rocks where I look at him and I'm like, dude, that's just Blackbeard, but cooler. I don't know. It's weird. It feels like an evolved Pokemon, so it kind of puts me off a little bit. But with that being said, I just want to let you guys know that I'm not going to go too hard into this, and that's simply because I'm not a very well-versed power scaler, nor do I want to be. You know, like I said, I kind of just go with the flow, and if something changes the narrative, I'm kind of cool with it. I feel like there's no objectively right or wrong answer when it comes to power scaling. Until we get the characters going all out, until we get to the end of story, things are still up for debate. And when we talk about these characters being stronger than another, I feel like it doesn't dispute the fact that all of these characters, and even characters who are not listed in this list, they're still pinnacles of their own strength. They're all still end game tier characters. And I do see them kind of like the Naruto ninja info cards right here, where yeah, like maybe Mihawk excels in swordsmanship, but in terms of raw power, he loses to Roxy Zebek. Or maybe Shanks is the perfect all-arounder. All across the board, he has very high stats, but he doesn't specialize in a single thing. Maybe Roger's the same way, but Roger's a little bit more buff than that. That is how I view these characters. I think they all excel in their own fields, and that's why when you talk about power scaling, it's not easy. Because you have to set up certain scenarios, and then it's like, oh, like they're 1v1ing on an island with nobody around, or, ooh, they're fighting, but they only use X item. You know, I feel like that is where a lot of this gets really dicey. So like I said, there is no objective right or wrong answer in my opinion, especially when we're talking about characters who have not shown us what they're capable of, right? I mean, yes, we saw Rocks clash, but we know that Rocks clashing in this chapter is not Rocks seriously trying. This isn't exactly Rocks going all out in a battle to the death. And same with Roger. We've never seen a serious Roger. We've never seen serious Shanks. And for Mihawk, I mean, all we have is Marineford, and we're going off of his title. You know, Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, and when we think about how strong he is, it's like, okay, like he should be as strong as Zoro, end of story, or as strong as Ryuma even. So that's kind of still up in the air, because we don't know what that's going to look like. So when people argue about this, I feel like it's mainly about feelings, like how do we feel about certain characters, and that's why I think there's no real objective right or wrong yet, because we don't know much about these characters. We're going off of like the bare minimum. So that's my stance on it. You know, like I said, if you were to tell me that X character is stronger than Y character, I would believe you until we get more from these guys, until we actually end off the series. I think it makes sense. You know, I think anything is still up for debate. Anything is possible. And, you know, I do honestly come into this with a very open mind. Some people like to think I'm biased because I like certain characters, but honestly, man, it's all One Piece at the end of the day, and things can change with a single chapter. So we're just going to see what everybody else is talking about, and we're going to see what the debates are. Kaido was on Rox's crew and still acknowledged Roger as the pinnacle of piracy. Yes, that is true. I wonder why that is, too. I wonder if it's just strength-based, or if it's also, ooh, Roger is the ideal pirate, right? Rox, not exactly the best captain. Roger, all around, he is way better. This one says, Oda, building up Rox to upscale Roger. Watch, that is it. You know, I think this right here is a great take on this, right? Because while Rocks looks great right now, and I think he still could end up better than Roger by the end of the story, I wouldn't be shocked if we get a chapter with Roger and he's actually a monster, right? We see Roger and we're like, oh shoot, maybe he does win the battle against Rocks in a 1v1, right? Maybe he didn't need Garp. I think that is something we have to, be aware of. All it takes, like the legendary BDA law said, it just takes one chapter. All right, Rocks, we got him for 2 chapters. Boom, look at this. Destroying the poles. Roger, he just needs 1 or 2 chapters too, and the narrative could change easily. So this one says, Rocks' feats in 2 chapters. Killed an admiral, crazy. Destroyed the Gate of Justice, size of an island or bigger than an island. Also, shouts to him killing an admiral. I saw a really funny clip of Morge, I believe, and he said, do you know how badly you have to lose a fight in One Piece to actually die? Yeah, Rocks did that. Rocks killed this guy, literally. He kidnapped 5 kings with no issue. Well, I think this is a feat, but I don't hold it too highly. I do think Admiral and Gates of Justice are like up here. Kidnapping 5 kings, it's kind of like in the lower tier, because we have seen that some kings are bums. Granted, there are kings that can fight, like King Neptune in his prime. Or, Riku Doldo III in his prime. They can fight. King Elizabello, after, what is it, like 5 hours, he could throw a punch that could presumably take down a Yonko. Crazy, by the way. I can't believe they gassed him up that hard. I don't know if you guys remember, back in Dressrosa, they were like, oh yeah, once he builds up that King's Punch, apparently he can one-shot a Yonko. Are you serious? Granted, though, we haven't seen that be put into action, but would the King's Punch actually take Big Mom down? Luffy, Shanks, Kaido, Whitebeard, Blackbeard, maybe Buggy. If Buggy doesn't dodge, yeah, I think Buggy would get taken down, but at that point, what are we saying, right? Oh, the King's Punch can take down somebody who fell into being a Yonko. Elizabello. But, we have had some weak kings like King Seki. He got captured by civilians. King Bakori. Kuma did use his Pawpaw Devil Fruit on King Bakori, but I don't think that's because Kuma needed to. I think Kuma just didn't like King Bakori, so it gave him the whooping. And then, of course, we have, other kings as well, like Stelly. Not exactly a king, but he's, he's nobility. I think that's a pretty good, comparison for Goa Kingdom. Yeah, he's a loser. And pretty much what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of kings in One Piece probably don't fight, and or they're just out of their prime. So this isn't exactly super shocking to me. Oh yeah, also another example, by the way, I just remembered this last minute, but Wapol. Wapol can fight, but is he the strongest character out there? Could you realistically put down defeats a Wapol-esque character on Rocks' list? I don't think I would. I feel like that's one I would kind of omit. But I get what he's saying, right? It's still like a one-of feat. Nobody's really done this. But then again, I don't think anybody really cares. He also went to the Flower Room unscathed. That is pretty insane. I think this is a pretty decent feat. Granted, it doesn't look like the Holy Knights were trying to stop him, and it was really just probably castle guards. And Sabo dealt with all of them pretty easily. Still not bad, but like I said, not the biggest feat here. He also clashed with Herald with Haki that ranges 5 kilometers. See, this is massive. This right here, Conqueror's Haki feat, Blast feat, it is insane. And also, another feat he didn't put in here, but Rocks is pretty much an undefeated Davy Back fighter as well. Yes, Davy Back fights aren't all about fighting and strength, but we did see a boxing match and Rocks was knocking the socks out of somebody, so yeah, I'd put that up there. But yeah, overall, Rocks, I think his resume is looking pretty damn good. This says, recency bias is going crazy right now. Not unwarranted though. I totally get the Rocks glaze, but I can't not give it to Roger, especially if we're talking about everybody in their prime. That's another tough part too, right? We have to think about characters in their prime. During God Valley, Whitebeard was in his prime, I think. It depends if he has the Guragura no Mi or not, but Whitebeard was in the prime age range, right? We do know that Kaido was not in his prime at the time. Big Mom, it's funny when it comes to Big Mom, right? When she's skinny, is she in her prime or is she in her prime current day? That's kind of like a toss-up, right? And then, of course, we have to remember that Roger also did not become King of the Pirates until way later after God Valley. So is this Roger in his prime? Is Roger in his prime when he becomes Pirate King? That's another toss-up too. I think there are a lot of variables when it comes to power scaling that people sometimes don't take in consideration. There's a lot of things that can determine the winner of a fight. And that is why I think power scaling in One Piece isn't exactly the easiest thing to do. It's not cut and dry. And I do think that is why a lot of people tend to debate and fight to the death over their character winning over another character. This one says, the poll is a tough one. We do know that all 4 of these characters are kind of at the peak of power. In the past, Rox had an edge over Roger, but we can't forget the fact that it wasn't Roger's prime yet. He reached his prime alongside Whitebeard and Garp a few years later. In my eyes, Prime, Rox, Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, Shanks, Mihawk are roughly equals in power. Sorry, that was like a lot right there. You know, I wasn't expecting like all these names. Their specialties varying little. Even if one defeats the other will definitely be seriously injured or worse on deathbed too. Like Luffy after Marineford, nearly dead. I can't think of a better example. Honestly speaking, I can't argue against others choosing Roger, Mihawk, Rox over Shanks. My personal bias is Shanks, yeah. I mean, I think this is a very healthy way to look at it, right? And it kind of goes back to this right here. Like, I think it does depend on the matchup. Like, maybe Mihawk does better against, let's say, Rox, right? If it's a pure swordsmanship battle, Mihawk might have the edge. But and then we bring in Roger, and maybe Roger has something that Mihawk can't counter, or maybe Shanks has something that Mihawk can't counter, and Mihawk would lose. I think there are just a lot of just little details that go into this, and at the end of the day, you know, I feel like the narrative around who wins, like I said, it can flip in a single chapter. We're truly at the whims of Oda. So I'll just read a few more and just see where everybody's going. This says, I know the recency bias is going wild right now, but I even think still we knew it was Rox before 1155. That is true. Even before these last couple of chapters, people already thought Rox was that guy. Like I said, because of what Sengoku said, right? Garp and Roger teaming up against Rox. That put him on the map in a heavy, heavy way. And then we also had Kaido imagining Rox while he was looking at Luffy saying, hey, you know, where does your ceiling go? So yeah, we have a lot of characters who are hyping the hell out of this guy. Garp and Roger had to fight to take him down. I can't wait to have more context for God Valley incident soon, and actually be able to power scale Roger and Syvduck more accurately. Yeah, and the tough part too, you know, one thing to keep in mind is the raid on Onigashima. If we were to hear about the raid on Onigashima from somebody else, right? Somebody who wasn't there. Because Sengoku wasn't at God Valley. He didn't really see what went down. But if we were to hear about Onigashima and how they took down Kaido and Big Mom, what would they say? Ooh, it took Luffy, Zoro, Law, Kid, and Killer going up to the rooftop to take down Kaido and Big Mom. And it's like, wait a minute. Yes, but I think Luffy kind of carried that Kaido fight, right? You could argue that the whole gang put in a good amount of damage into Kaido, but you gotta admit that Luffy put in the last 50% by himself. And then plus, Momonosuke showed up, Yamato showed up, we had the Scabbards there as well, all landing blows on Kaido. It's tough. Like, I feel like when we get God Valley, it's not going to be cut and dry. Hey, Roger and Garp just 2v1'd Rox all the way from 100% HP down to 0%. No. I do think there is going to be a lot of nuance in that fight. And like I said, the Holy Knights are there, Saturn is there, Emu could show up at any time. We had random Marines there, Bogard was there. Like, there's just too many characters to really say what happened. And yeah, like, if we were to hear about the raid on Onigashima from an outsider's perspective, what would we hear? I guess a good example that, you know, that might even be the case is here in Elbaf. Do you guys remember when Luffy showed up to the party? And the Giants were like, hey, Luffy, you took down Big Mom. Hell yeah, we hated her. You know, I'm glad the bitch is dead. And Luffy just hit them with the question mark. He didn't know what they were talking about because Luffy didn't take down Big Mom. But Luffy didn't say anything, right? Because Luffy doesn't really care about getting that victory or claiming that title. But yeah, I think the story from Sengoku should be taken with a grain of salt. I think it's a good place to start when it comes to speculating what happened to God Valley. But I bet there's going to be more to it. And that's, like I said, that's where I fall. You know, with one chapter, all of this can change. So now, I have a poll in between, but I do want to go to this next poll because just like this poll, it's almost exactly the same. I kept the pictures the same, I kept the orders the same, but the wording of the question is different. The strongest character in a sword-only battle. And of course, they can use Haki. I do think Haki is pivotal when it comes to swordsmanship. I mean, we don't know how black blades are made, but I'm assuming Haki is kind of utilizing that. And of course, when you fight with a sword, you coat your blade in Haki. And plus, we saw the Kamusari that has Haki in it. We've seen Rox's attack that has Haki in it, and the narrator, I believe, called that swordsmanship. So yeah, I think Haki should always be taken into consideration when it comes to a battle. I feel like that's almost like a no-brainer. But with the sword-only stipulation, Mihawk wins this one. People do think that Mihawk would handily beat Rox Syvduck. Well, I don't want to say handily, but, you know, obviously 47% over 35%, that's not a close-ish margin. You know, they do put Mihawk a decent amount above Rox. Of course, it's not the same gap that Rox had over Roger last poll, but, I mean, it's something, right? That's crazy. But, of course, I do think this ties back to another poll, which we can scroll down and look at. Oh, I'm kind of spoiling you guys on the other polls we're going to look at. Where is it? Where is it? Shoot. How far down is it? Where is the ceiling? Okay, here it is. What power does Rox Syvduck have? Only 20% of people out of 7,000, almost 8,000 votes, believe that Rox has no devil fruit. Right there, 74% of people think that Rox has something else in the bag. And that could be a good reasoning as to why, in this poll up here, wow, I have so many things I gotta talk about. That could be a really good reasoning as to why people do believe that Mihawk would squeeze out the victory. And that's because they think that Rox is more than just a swordsman. And I think that is pretty true for also Shanks and Roger as well. I mean, for Shanks, now that we know that Shanks is a celestial dragon, he hails from the Fagarland family, and that he had that weird mark on his arm, I would not be shocked if Shanks had something else that could put him above Mihawk in a non-sword-only battle. Like, let's say Shanks has a demonic transformation. He can use the Mark of the Abyss and travel. He can use black magic. And when Shanks uses that, yeah, he could probably beat Mihawk. I think that wouldn't be that absurd. And then, of course, like I said, for Rox, people do believe he has a devil fruit. And I think there's some good reasoning behind that. I think the reason why people think Rox is more than just a swordsman is because of God Valley and the mystique behind it. An island just disappeared? What do you mean? How does that even happen? Is there a hole in the ocean? Did Emu use Uranus or some ancient weapon to destroy the island like Lelucia? Or is Rox the reason why that island is no longer there? We have no clue. And then, of course, Blackbeard, right? Rox's son. Why is he so obsessed with devil fruits? Why did he bark the minute he saw the Yami Yami no Mi? Did Rox have that devil fruit beforehand? Was Rox wanting to eat that devil fruit even? We're not too sure. So yeah, overall, I think it makes sense why people would pick Mihawk here. Like I said, sword-only battle, Haki included. Mihawk probably takes all these wins. And as far as Roger goes, right? So we talked about Shanks maybe having celestial dragon powers. We talked about Rox not just being a swordsman, right? And plus, we've seen Dave back fights where he punches, he shoots a gun, he had an axe. Rox is very versatile. As far as Roger goes, that's kind of the odd one, right? You know, like I said, for these guys, we had like ideas as to how they could battle without a sword. But for Roger, it's like, we've only seen him with the sword. Have we seen him with the pistol, actually? Is Roger like a through and through pirate where he has like the pistol, he's got the, you know, the beer in his hand at all time? Let me see, One Piece, Roger. I'm just going to scroll through a couple of images. Okay, first image, no gun. I don't know why. When I see Roger, I can kind of imagine him just being a gunslinger every now and then. Like, imagine a dual wielder. We need a dual wielder. Like, they could have a sword in one hand and then a pistol in the other. I think that'd be pretty cool. I can't believe we don't really have that yet. Do we? We don't. We have a dual pistol wielder with Izo, but we don't have, like, a hybrid fighter. That's so odd. Am I crazy? Am I, like, blanking on a very obvious character that does do that? None of the Yonko do that. None of the past people do. I guess we don't. Wow, really odd. But yeah, out of all the pictures I'm looking at with Roger that we've seen before, he doesn't have a pistol or any other weapon in his arsenal. So Roger does look like a through and through swordsman. So I do wonder, like, if Roger had something else in the bag, or maybe Roger is very much like Luffy, where, you know, he's punching and kicking, and that is like some of his main powers. I think that'd be kind of cool. It would be cool if Roger utilized his sword, but also started kicking in between. Which, would that be swordsmanship? See, that's where it gets dicey, right? What is swordsmanship at the end of the day? I'm rewatching Skypiea, and obviously Nami's not like the arbiter of what is and isn't a swordsman, but in Skypiea, Zoro jumped in to fight the Sky Sharks, and I think he ended up like punching or kicking a shark to beat it, and then Nami was like, hey, what the hell? That's not swordsmanship. And Zoro said, shut up, Nami. Like, you try getting in here and fighting these sharks. So it's like, yeah, like, are punching and kicking considered? I don't know. That's a tough one. But yeah, maybe Roger's just an all-rounder like Rocks. I think that would be pretty freaking awesome. But yeah, let me just go down the couple of comments. Like I said, we're not going to stay too long because I know people are getting heated in here, you know. People are fighting hard for their characters, man. It is, hey, I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate it. I love seeing the messages on the side. But let me tell you, some of these fights, brother, it's getting crazy up here. Mihawk, living strong off his epithet for sure. Can we get a single feat out of this man? I know. I feel the same way. You know, as a guy that does like Mihawk, it kind of sucks that we don't really have anything yet. You know, every Mihawk feat is... Hey, I'll admit it. It's pretty awful, dude. You know, if you're a Mihawk fan, you are living in the trenches, brother. Because I'll be the first guy to say it, but I don't think his Marineford showing was that great. Actually, I think it was kind of awful. The only good scene at Marineford that I think Mihawk has. See, slicing the ice mountains, I think that was impressive, but it didn't really move me. What really moved me was when Mihawk was about to attack Luffy, and Luffy was about to use his bazooka against him, and then Luffy just imagined, like, he saw into the future somehow, right? People are saying, oh, Mihawk put that vision in him. People are saying Luffy had future sight, or he just got a bad vibe. But Luffy did see his hands getting sliced off right there. And I think that is one of Mihawk's best scenes, minus the Zoro stuff, right? The Zoro stuff back at Baratie, that's like, what, 25 years ago? Yeah, it was like 25 years ago. Yeah, it's a long time. You know, we can't really talk about that anymore. But yeah, you know, when it comes to Marineford, after those scenes, he got blocked by Diamond Jozu, and then he spent like a solid minute fighting Vista. And those don't look good, you know? Like, I look at those scenes, I'm like, damn, really? The world's strongest swordsman? Like, I'm just imagining Zoro, end of story. Like, Zoro, end of story, you know, post-game Mihawk, world's strongest swordsman, helped Luffy become Pirate King, hit the One Piece. Would Zoro also get stalled there? I don't know. I don't think so. Of course, though, like, when it comes to Marineford, it's been so long since that's happened, right? That's before we could actually see Haki. You know, that's before we actually knew about so many of these other powers, before we even heard about Rocks. So I don't hold it too against him, but I will admit it, man. Marineford wasn't exactly the golden age for Mihawk fans. So this one says, where's Bogart? Okay, get out of here. Where's Bogart? Okay, yeah. Where's Bogart? Yeah, where's Killer, guys, huh? You know, where's Mr. One? Before you pick Mihawk, remember that none of the other three are made of ice. Hope that helps. Rocks became my favorite character in 2 chapters. You guys are crazy if you think Mihawk is beating Rocks and Roger in a sword fight, when sword is their main weapon. I know who Oda is picking, so I'm picking the same as him, Shanks. You know, it's funny, because when we heard about Mihawk, it's like, hey, you know, Mihawk's the world's strongest swordsman, but let me tell you, you know, he clashed with Shanks. You know, their clashes were legendary. And then, of course, we had the whole thing where, like, Mihawk's like, hey, I'm not going to fight you because you only have one arm. And it's like, damn, they do give me, like, Guy and Kakashi vibes. That right there is, like, my most apt comparison. But it reminds me of Guy and Kakashi where, you know, 1 minute Guy wins more than Kakashi, and then the next minute Kakashi wins more than Guy. They do seem like true and blue rivals. This one says, I need to see something from Mihawk in order to make me think otherwise. We've only heard about his amazing swordsmanship, but we've never actually seen anything too crazy. I'm just waiting to see a monstrous attack to blow my mind, but until then, it's Shanks or Syvduck. I like how Roger's not even here. But yeah, I agree with this, right? I mean, Shanks has an insane feat, dude. Like, Shanks going over and one-tapping Eustace Kid and essentially his whole crew, right? I think it's just absolutely absurd. And that right there was a sword attack, mind you. Right? Kamusari's a sword attack. So Shanks doing that, like, I get why people want to put Shanks above Mihawk. Like, I don't think that's that bad. I think one thing that would help me, at least, believe that Shanks, Rocks, or Roger would actually beat Mihawk would be if these guys had a black blade. We don't exactly know, though, what a black blade even is or how to make it, but I like to assume that a black blade makes your sword stronger at the bare minimum, right? I don't know. You know, I don't think anybody's ever said that. Like, hey, when your blade becomes black, it's like 10 times stronger. Yeah, nobody's really talked about it. And that's because the only other person in the series with the black blade is dead. You know, Ryuma can't exactly spill the beans. And then Mihawk, he seemed very tight-lipped about it when it came to teaching Zoro, so, I don't know, man. You know, for all we know, the black blade could just be a straight appearance thing. Like, oh, once you become the world's strongest swordsman, that's when you get the black blade, so it doesn't really mean much. But I like to imagine it is a damage booster. Syvduck's sword sends people flying with explosions. I think I'm going to go ahead and just rock with him. Oh, that's a good one. Syvduck's sword, rock with him. That's not bad. The Moria scaling is crazy. The Moria scaling. Wait, how does Moria tie into this? How is he upscaled? Oh, just because of the fact that Moria had the zombies? I mean, Moria did have a sword, to be fair. Moria did use a blade for a little bit, and then after he lost to Kaido, he just tossed that in the trash. Kind of sad, man. You know, if Moria kept the blade, would he be in this list? No. I don't think he would. No, never mind. If we had like 3 more options to put in here, I would put Vista, Moria. No, I was going to say Big Mom. I mean, she has a sword and she uses the sword, but also the sword just like F's off and then joins and combines with the other Big Mom apparel and becomes like a laser cannon, which I don't know if that counts, right? Well, yeah, it started as a sword, but now it's like this weird laser beam cloud monster. Huh. This comment says, I need to see how Rox destroyed the Gates of Justice, because if Rox, on God, straight up took his blade and cut it down, or with his swordsmanship probably, just blowing a hole into it, it is the single greatest attack feat we've ever seen in the series to date. Yes. Yeah, it would be. I mean, the Gate of Justice is no joke, right? I mean, this is, somebody said it earlier, but it's literally like an iron steel island. He blew a hole through that? What? That's nuts. I mean, even current day Luffy, you know, Luffy with Gear 5th, that's like a Bajrang gun maybe, right? Like, would a Bajrang gun destroy the Gate of Justice? I think so. I would like to imagine a Bajrang gun would destroy it, but a Bajrang gun is like an endgame attack, you know what I mean? Like, that was the Kaido finisher. So Rox destroying this, insane. And keep in mind, but if he did it with ease, if he just whipped out a random attack and did that, yeah, Rox would then have displayed the single best attack in the series so far. And notice how I say so far, right? All it takes is one chapter with another character like Shanks or Roger or Mihawk or even Dragon. You know, maybe Dragon whips out a sword. And then the narrative can change. I think it is really good to have your own preferences, right? I'm not saying do not have a preference or bias. I'm just saying always keep the door open in case somebody else slips ahead and takes the lead. This one says Mihawk is the weakest here. And I could see that, you know, like I said, going to the other pole where sword is excluded, he's fighting over 3rd place against Shanks. And that's because people do expect Rox to have more than just a sword on hand. I mean, hell, Blackbeard, his son, has never used the sword, you know what I mean? Like, the minute Blackbeard picks up a blade, would he be able to use it? Would it be like a, you know, like father, like son scenario, or Blackbeard just whips out a blade and then all of a sudden he uses the cannon blast attack that his dad can do? I wonder. Because with Luffy and his family, you know, we haven't seen Dragon fight, but I'd like to imagine he does use his fists like Luffy. And then Garp, guy's known as Garp the Fist, you know, he's punching just like Luffy as well. So it's like, damn, like, it could be a familial thing. And then with Shanks, right? We know his family. We know about Figarland, Garling, and Shamrock. They all use swords. So Shanks, you know, his swordsmanship up there as well. And just like Roger, you know, Roger is his found father. Yeah, Shanks fights like him. So I'm surprised that Blackbeard hasn't picked up a blade yet to mimic his father. Maybe he will. Or maybe because Blackbeard has never grown up with his father since, you know, Rox dies 2 years after he's born. Maybe Blackbeard just never had the chance to learn swordsmanship. Huh, I don't know. I guess I'll pass the question on to you guys. If Blackbeard were to get his daddy's blade, would he be able to use it in the same way? Or no, is Blackbeard not proficient in swordsmanship at all? This comment says, I genuinely don't think Mihawk beats any of them. Making it sword only gives him a chance, but still no. Syvduck feats. Off screens, an admiral destroys the Gate of Justice, threatens Emu with a gun. Sabo did better, by the way. Sabo did it better. I mean, I'm not gonna get hung up on the Sabo line because he's not even in this list, right? I would say Rox left cleaner. You know, you could say Sabo at least landed the blow, but Emu ate Sabo's fire, so it's like, I think it would have looked better for Sabo if he left without getting stabbed, but that's just me. Haki Clash has 5-kilometer shockwave. Roger feats clashes with Prime Whitebeard, defeats Rock's pirates with Navy's help, and one-taps Odin. Shanks' feat. Wi-Fi Haki's an admiral, defeats a 3 billion bounty man, defeats and captures Loki, and stops Kaido from going to Marineford. Mihawk feats. Cutting ice, yeah. Don't forget, hey, Don Krieg. Mihawk destroyed his armada. But yeah, I think that's the problem with Mihawk, right? Even with Roger, you know, I would say Roger, while we have these feats, I do want more from him. Is that greedy to say? But I do want to see like a serious Roger. Because right now, you know, Whitebeard, yes, they clashed, but Roger likes Whitebeard. You know, yes, he defeated the Rock's pirates, but we didn't see that. And then as far as one-tapping Odin, he wanted to test his strength against a monster. Like, I want to see what a serious and mad Roger is like. The reason why Shanks defeated Kid so easily, it's because Shanks was enraged, right? Shanks envisioned a future where his fleet would get destroyed. Brother, I want to see Roger in that same scene. I want to see Roger just mad and angry, like maybe somebody slapped Rayleigh, and Roger's like, okay, time to F this guy up. I want to see serious Roger. And in the same vein, I want to see serious Mihawk. And hell, even serious Syvduck, right? Syvduck so far, we haven't seen him seriously yet. Like, that sounds absurd, but like, it's never been on screen. Like, Syvduck's kind of been chilling for the most part, brother. You know, even with the clash with Harold, he was smiling, dude. When Syvduck clashed with Harold, he found a friend. You know, Syvduck stopped taking it seriously right after that first blow. So yeah, I think across the board, I do want to see more from everybody. Everybody. I think Rock's fights like Dante from Devil May Cry. Oh, dude, see, this is what I'm talking about, man. We need a hybrid fighter. Yes. I think Rock's fights like Dante from Devil May Cry. Like, imagine him using all kinds of weapons and doing insane combos and juggling enemies up in the air. We know he uses a sword, he was shown holding a pistol, and he used a cannon and boxing gloves in the Davy Back fight, yes. And, you know, funny going back to it, that is what I kind of want Roger to do, man. Like, I feel like pirates just use everything in their arsenal. I really wish we got that with Roger, but maybe Rox really is going to be that pirate guy that we get it all from. Or maybe Joy Boy, right? Joy Boy's the first pirate. Maybe he fights like that. But then again, we do know that Joy Boy had the Sun God Nika fruit, so there's a good chance he just fights like Luffy. But we do have the Sun God Nika thing where, like, you know, the sword and the spear are silhouetted with him, so maybe he uses those too? Which I don't know. I don't know if I've heard about a pirate using a spear before. That's more like a gladiator kind of thing, right? More like an Imperial China kind of thing. It says, Roger or Shanks have the strongest Haki in my opinion, and Roger has 2 arms, so I pick Roger. Yes, Mihawk has a black blade, but I'm pretty sure Oda confirmed no Conquerors for him. Oh yeah, that's another problem too. Mihawk has yet to be confirmed as a Conqueror's Haki user. It's not that Oda confirmed no Conqueror's Haki, he just did not list it for him, and that was via Vivre card as well. Vivre cards are tough because we do get a lot of confirmations of Haki there, like, oh, you remember that character pre-time skip? He has armament Haki. Remember that guy from over there? He has observation. For Mihawk, he's only been stated, I don't know how many Vivre cards we got of him, but he was only stated to have armament and observation. They never said Conqueror's Haki. So that right there could be something that would really detriment Mihawk if he doesn't have it. I'd kind of be shocked if he didn't, considering how crucial it is to attack power nowadays. Like, I know people don't like it, but we have seen Conqueror's Haki attacks just overwhelm most people, right? I mean, look at these Conqueror's Haki clashes we have, man. Like, those are some of the best feats we have in the story. And if we're saying that Mihawk doesn't have Conqueror's Haki, yeah, dude, he goes down. Like, are you kidding me? That's insane. Or if we wanted to really spin it, you know, you could also flip that in the opposite direction and say Mihawk, despite not being a conqueror, still somehow became the world's strongest swordsman, which would kind of be a flex. That would kind of be a flex. Like, hey, like this guy, he rose to the top of the verse without this ability, which kind of reminds me of Rock Lee out of Naruto. Like, hey, he's one of the strongest guys out there, and he doesn't even use ninjutsu. And then Rock Lee gets his legs broken, and then he's like useless for like, I think 300 episodes, which is very unfortunate. Rest in peace, Rock Lee, man. Roger will remind everyone why he is the Pirate King. Yep, I agree with this too. Like I said, all we need is one chapter. I will admit though, the other day, I looked through Roger's crew. Some of them look kind of lame, I'm not gonna lie, man. You know, when I think about the crews, yeah, this is like a separate debate, but when I think about the crews, dude, Rox's gang has so much more aura to him. I'm looking at Roger's gang, and it's like, dude, you can tell Roger recruited friends and people he liked, whereas Rox, man, he just seriously went after the heavy hitters, and it shows, it shows. But yes, that is all I'm going to look into as far as the power scaling polls go. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to gauge the community, right? After we learned that Rox is a swordsman to some extent, I wanted to see how people felt about both of these. And I think the results are really interesting. You know, I am curious to see, like, what will happen as we go on in the story, because since we're in that final saga, we will see a serious Mihawk eventually. We will see an even more serious Shanks eventually. Rox, I'm assuming we're going to see his downfall. If we end, not this flashback, but Rox in general, if we end the story and we do not see Rox going all out, I will be a little bit sad. You know, it's going to be like that crazy what if, like, what if he did this? What if he did that? What if he had this power? No, we got to see this, right? And then same with Roger. I think since we are here, since we finally got the Rox reveal, that just shows that we will see the rest of these guys soon. And then plus, like, he's not in this list because he's not like a swordsman, but Dragon. You know, Dragon's another character that I personally, like I said, I don't like Dragon. Dragon is not my favorite character by a long shot, but I do think Dragon's gonna be like up there in like the top 5 or top 10 or something. So yeah, in lieu of this latest chapter, I just really wanted to see where the community was, and I find it kind of interesting, right? If you say that Mihawk wins this, but he loses this one, it's like, yeah, it feels like a lot of people do believe that Rox has a lot in his arsenal. And if that's the case, brother, if that's the case, I want to see it. I want to see more Roxties back. So, you know what? How long have we been going on? Oh my god, we've been going on for a minute. Okay, so I have a lot of other things we'll look over later, but I guess we can end it off with this next one. So, for the next poll, I went ahead and just asked a simple question, but who will be the next character to get a black blade? They don't have to awaken it. They could simply just have a black blade. I should have put that in there as well. That's my fault. But yes, when it comes to black bladed characters, we only have 2 characters in the entire series that have it, and that is Ryuma and Mihawk, a 2 of feat. And it looks like a lot of people, 81% of the voters here, believe that Zoro will be the next one. I think that's very fair. You know, I think Zoro obviously will get a black blade by the end of the series. That's why I put him by himself, right? Look at this. Zoro versus any pirate, any WG operative, and then any marine. Zoro takes that by a landslide. It does feel like, because there's only 2 of them in the series right now, it feels like only the world's strongest swordsman can get a black blade. So yeah, once Zoro beats Mihawk, I think that's where he could get it. He could even get it before Mihawk, like in his second to last battle, which does bring up these guys, right? These other characters. When I talk about pirates, I mentioned Shiryu, Vista, and Shanks, and 8% of people voted for them. You know, if I had to pick a pirate that could get a black blade, I would want Shanks to get it. Shanks, dude. Shanks is over here clashing with Mihawk. They're pretty much considered equal in a lot of people's eyes. And, you know, whether you believe Shanks is stronger or Mihawk is stronger, the fact that Shanks can box with Mihawk, I think he could get a black blade. If anything, I'm kind of surprised that he doesn't. Same with Roger, now that I think about it, right? Roger, the pinnacle of his era, didn't have a black blade. I wonder why. Like, how do you do it? Like, do you have to make a deal with the devil? Do you have to, like, I don't know, really become the world's strongest? Like, can only one person at a time have a black blade? And even then, since Roger was kind of before Mihawk, who had a black blade in that era? Who had the world's strongest swordsman title? Like, it feels so odd, right? And then as far as WG operative goes, I would give the black blade to just a random holy knight. No, I don't know. Emu has a sword in their room. Would it make sense if Emu had a black blade? Maybe. I feel like Emu's just that type of character that has everything in their arsenal, so maybe Emu would have a black blade. But then they'd be like a weird swordsman, magician hybrid thing. Ugh. I'd probably give it to a holy knight. I know people are probably saying, oh, Sai, what about Shodai Katetsu? What about Venus Ujuro? I don't know. You know, Venus, he seems really powerful, but I almost do want to put more onus on Holy Knights we haven't met yet. Maybe even Garling. You know, we know that Garling has a sword. Maybe when he whips it out, it's black? No, have we seen Garling whip out his blade before? Post God Valley? I don't think we have. Yeah, I don't think we have. I think it was in its guard when we saw it when he executed Mjosgard. Guard when he executed Mjosgard. That all kind of like flowed really weirdly. And then as far as like Shodai Katetsu, you know, when V Nasujiro clashed with Zoro, it wasn't black. So I don't think he's just going to randomly unlock a black blade in the Zoro fight or whoever he ends up fighting. So yeah, I think Nasujiro is kind of already written out in my opinion. So yeah, I'd either give it to Garling, a random Holy Knight that we haven't met yet, or maybe even Emu. But Emu feels weird again, like I said. So maybe just a Holy Knight and or Garling. Yeah, that's where I'm going to go. As far as Marine goes, there's not a lot of candidates. It's really just Fujitora. I know I put Tashigi in here because she has swords. Green Bull also has a sword. It's not blackened, but maybe they'll be the first to awaken it. I don't think so. I mean, let's be real here, dude. I don't think anybody thinks that Tashigi is going to get a black blade out of everybody. If Tashigi gets a black blade, I will genuinely be surprised. Like, this would be... Okay, going up to this, right? Oh, you know, Shanks is the strongest by far. Roger's the strongest. Mihawk rocks. Maybe even Dragon's a swordsman. I would rather believe that Dragon is a swordsman than Tashigi getting a black blade. Like, that is absurd. I wrote this here last night. I giggled, dude. I was kicking my feet like a little girl. I said, no way. Oh, man. This one says, wait up, let me grab my crystal ball real quick. Of course, the next guy to have a black blade will be the only guy in the story who even cares. In my opinion, Oda really dropped the ball when it comes to swords, swordsmen, and bounty hunters. Oh, bounty hunters, brother. That's a... Ugh, what a crazy one. I would have been surprised that if the next arc is Lodestar Island, that Zoro gets a black blade there, and Luffy finally meets Dragon there to parallel Logtown, which is on Pole Star Island. I feel like it works for Zoro because Buggy will probably be there, and I think all four crews are going to converge. Shanks, BB, Cross Guild, and Straw Hats, and therefore Mihawk would be there. I feel like there'd be a lot of ways for it to all make sense. When Zoro is the world's greatest swordsman, black blade for Yuma, and Mihawk, no one else. Yes. I think my problem with Zoro getting it after beating Mihawk is that he wouldn't get a chance to flex it. You know, like, imagine this, right? Zoro beats Mihawk. He gets a black blade, and then that's it. Like, sure, that's cool. Don't get me wrong. That would still be cool. But it would be odd if Zoro never used it against another strong character. Unless we fight Emu afterwards, or unless we fight Shiryu, which, you know, Shiryu versus Black Blade Zoro. World's strongest swordsman Zoro versus Shiryu the Rain. Maybe I'm downplaying Shiryu, but I just feel like that wouldn't be a great matchup for him. But yeah, you know, when it comes to this, I hope it's not at the very end. I hope it's like right before his final few battles. This one says, I'm totally putting my money on Zoro. It just makes perfect sense, right? His whole dream is to be the best swordsman, and turning his blades black is a huge part of that journey. We've already seen him working on it, especially with Enma, and it's basically his destiny to eventually pull it off. Other characters might be strong, but none of them that specific. Long-standing goal tied directly to creating a black blade like Zoro does in the story. Yeah, and one fun thing too I found out about is that the whole Meito grading scheme that Oda based swords on in One Piece off of is a real-life thing. The whole thing with 12 Supreme Great Blades, 21 Greater Blades, and 50 Great Blades, that is real. And guess what? Eventually, I think it was like years down the line, they added 3 swords to the Supreme Grade Blade list. I think that is what Zoro's going to do with his blades. I think he will make all 3 of his blades blackened, and he'll raise their level to Supreme Grade. How is that possible? I have no idea. If Zoro doesn't awaken all 3 of his blades to black, at least the Wado Ichimonji, Kuina's blade. I think that'll be really nice, right? Very nice for Kuina. She's dead, but she was able to see through his journey to become world's strongest swordsman because her blade is now the black one. So let me see here. Should we squeeze in one more poll? I think we should. Yeah. Why did Emu let Rox D. Zebek go? See, this is an interesting question. This is something that I was seriously wondering about after this chapter. It's like, okay, Rox, madman, obviously not a great guy. Not just that, member of the D-Clan. I do not think that was a secret, right? And then plus he threatened Emu. He had a gun, and he wasn't pointing it at him, but he was ready to shoot him, dude. He was ready to blast him. But Emu let him go. Why is that? So I asked the question right here, and of course, maybe I could have worded some of these a little bit better. Maybe I could have came up with better options, but I feel like we don't know much about Emu or what they're thinking of, so it's kind of hard to base anything off of it, right? So the first option was that it was all part of a grander plan. Second option is that it's simply a plot convenience, and Emu was aura farming. Yeah, I could have worded this a little bit better. I get that. Third one. Relied on the guards dash the admiral that Rox later killed. That would be a mistake. Emu, if you rely on Marines, what are you doing? And then the fourth option is that Emu couldn't dash didn't want to fight. Maybe that's because Emu would get too wounded. Maybe it's because this battle would go on too long, or maybe people would start questioning what's happening up in the castle. These were the options. And it seems like a lot of people just think that it was convenient. You know, there is no deep reasoning behind it. Emu simply just let the guy go because Oda wanted him to. Personally, I fall in the first category. Whoa, is this like... Yeah, it's second to last place. I think that it's all part of a grander plan. I could see Emu being a Wano prophecy believer type of character. That's a weird way to put it. But back at Wano, Toki said that in 20 years... You know, you will know the dawn. In 20 years, 9 shadows will come back and stab you. She told that to Orochi and Kaido. Well, she didn't tell it to them. She said it to a bunch of random people, and then they told Kaido and Orochi. But you get the gist of it, right? I think Emu could be the same way. Like maybe Emu had to wait 900 years or 800 years before they can do something. Kind of like how Roger showed up to Laughtail, and he said, oh, I am too early. Maybe that's it. You know, maybe Emu is planning for something greater, and to achieve his plan, to achieve whatever they're aiming for, they have to let history play its course, so they let Rox D. Zebek go. That's where I'm at. Maybe that's cope, but I do like to imagine Emu is really that cogniscient. So this one, you know, relying on the admirals and guards, like I said, that's just a bad idea. I mean, hey, I am a Marine guy. I love the admirals. Would I ever rely on them, though? Probably not. You know, like, minus Akainu and Kuzan, I wouldn't rely on these guys. And we're talking about guards and admirals that we don't even know of. Right? This flashback is 56 years in the past. Yeah, we have no idea who these guys are. For all we know, they could be bums. And of course, we do know that the admiral ends up dying anyway, so... Yeah, bad idea from Emu. And now as far as couldn't dash didn't want to fight, like I said, this could just be because Emu wanted to keep their presence low. Maybe if they fought Rox D. Zebek, it would be more trouble than it's worth. And then, of course, if they beat Rox D. Zebek, how would they explain it? They'd have to end up going out of their way to pretend like Rox D. Zebek didn't exist. Like for Sabo, for example, right? King Cobra died, but the thing is, Sabo is in the room. So they simply blame Sabo. Easy peasy. But for Rox D. Zebek, though, you kill Rox, who do you give the achievement to, right? You can't say, oh, X character beat Rox D. Zebek. Technically, they could. You know, maybe in a parallel universe, or different universe, we say that the Admiral killed Rox D. Zebek. That'd be crazy. Yeah, you know, Rox didn't beat the Admiral beat Rox D. Zebek, guys, but actually it was all Emu. Yeah. And of course, like, as far as not wanting to fight too, it could just be that Rox is so below Emu that Emu doesn't care. I don't know if we'll see the comment here. Yeah, I don't see it right off rip. Oh, here it is. There are ants in my garden too. This right here could genuinely be Emu's perception on Rox D. Zebek. Like, yeah, Rox is not going to beat me. Rox can't hurt me. Why would I even care? Like, this guy's literally like an insect. Which, funny enough, you know, the Gorosei and Emu, they refer to the D-Clan as insects anyways, so kind of fits. On to the comments now. They say, Emu didn't care about rocks. He only got involved when something personal about him was mentioned. Emu wants to protect the flower room, and the damage would be too great. Ooh, wait, that's a good take on it. The damage would be too great in the flower room. Huh. Yeah, you're right, because Emu also has a picture of Lily in the flower room. What if Emu is like Big Mom? Where Big Mom has the Mother Carmel photo, and the minute you destroy the photo, Big Mom goes crazy. Maybe Emu's the same way. Emu is like, yes, I love my flowers. I love my garden. Please don't destroy it. And also, don't destroy my Queen Lily portrait over there. Don't do it. Maybe that's it. Oda was glazing Syvduck with all the feats in this chapter. It was purely for aura, and you know what? I am okay with that, yeah? Why would Emu get into an extended battle when keeping his identity secret would be his main focus? Top tier fights are explosive, and Rox is strong enough to destroy the gates of justice. In order to take out Rox, he need to make his presence known to everybody on the red line. Rox's fight with an admiral got aired out pretty much right after it happened, so there's no keeping the skirmish a secret if they came to blows. Also, Rox planned on running out of there anyways, so chasing Rox off the red line is the worst case scenario. Thinking about plot convenience, that's aura farming for why Emu might have let Rox Syvduck go, is basically saying, hey, maybe Oda just did it that way to keep the story moving and make Emu seem super mysterious and powerful without having to explain anything right away. It's less about Emu's actual in-world plan and more about Oda wanting to keep us guessing and building up Emu's epic boss vibe for later reveals, rather than getting bogged down with the nitty-gritty of why they didn't step in back then. That is fair. And like I said, I probably could have worded some of these a lot better, but yeah, I have no excuse. That's my fault, guys. So, on to the next poll. We'll do one last one. And this one... this is about Eustace Captain Kid. Hey, as a Kid fan and a Kid defender, I had to ask, right? It's funny. I think I held a poll like this back after he lost to Shanks, and the results are very different. It looks like as time goes on, people are warming up to Kid. It's kind of like how, you have an ex-girlfriend. She cheats on you. You hate that skink. Oh, you hate her to death. But after like 5 years pass, you still hate her. But you hate her a little bit less. Who cares? We're moving on. You got a new girlfriend or boyfriend. It's 2025. And you're living life again. You still don't like her, but you're a little bit accepting. If she said hello, maybe you say hello back. You don't know. And I feel like that's how people see Kid, right? At first, a lot of people thought he was dead. A lot of people didn't think he was going to come back into the story. But now, the tides are becoming more equal. Or at least that is what the poll is saying to me. So, looking at it, I say, will he ever become relevant again? First option was yes, he will be important, and that will start here in Elbaf. Second option says yes, but he'll be important later on, so after Elbaf. No, he will have a very minor role. So minor is, of course, that's subjective to each and every person, right? Minor could be, hey, Kid comes back and he fights fodder. That's kind of how I view minor role. Like, hey, Mugiwara, go fight Emu. I will fight Vice Admiral Doberman. That is a minor role. If Kid comes back and he lands one attack, like, I got your back, Mugiwara, railgun. Keep running. That's a minor role. When I think about being important, I think about lore. I think about an actual 1v1 matchup against like a God Knight or Gorosei. I think about maybe even Kid helping Luffy fight Emu. That is what I view as, quote, important or relevant. So minor role is everything aside from that. Maybe even like a cameo, right? Like maybe we don't see Kid fight anybody. Maybe Kid just shows up at the very end, sipping some martinis with Bellamy and making flags. Maybe he's not even a pirate anymore. That could also be considered a very minor role, obviously. And then, of course, for the last option, it's simple, it's plain, but he's just dead. Shanks actually killed this guy. We're never going to see him again. So, it looks like, let's see here, let's add this up a little bit. So, right here, we have 56% of people essentially believing that Kid's not going to do anything important. Like I said, if I were to hold this poll a year and a half ago, I think it'd be around 70%. But people are warming up a little bit. People are warming up, you know? So yeah, 56% think that he's not going to come back in a very big way, if he's even alive at that. Whereas we have 31% believing that yes, he'll come back, but later, and then 13% thinking it will be here in Elbaf. Personally, like I said, as a Kid fan, and as somebody who just, I don't know, like, this sounds like snootish to say, but I have been reading One Piece for a while, right? We've all been reading the same story, and because of that, I do have a preconceived notion to believe that characters will typically survive attacks like the Kamusari. I just tend to believe that characters will survive most attacks in general, unless you're like Pedro, right? Pedro died to Dynamite, and then Ashura Doji also died to Dynamite too. Who else died? Izo died to a Shigan. But the thing is, I feel like those characters kind of, you know, they kind of fulfilled their purpose. But for Kid, he didn't really do too much. Like, yes, he beat Big Mom. But I feel like he's such a hot-headed character. I just can't imagine that being the end of him. I really cannot. So I do fall in line with the whole thing where Kid is alive right now. As far as when he will be important, in my opinion, this is a hotter take. I think he'll be important here in Elbaf. It's funny, I mentioned this earlier, but the Giants were asking Luffy about Big Mom. They're like, hey, Luffy, good job taking down, you know, our #1 enemy. We hate that girl. Luffy didn't do it. It was Kid. Luffy had no idea what they're talking about. So I could see Kid coming back into Elbaf, and he could finally get some praise from somebody, right? If the fan base isn't going to do it, maybe the Giants will. You know, maybe the Giants are like, hey, Kid, we wrecked your ass over there with our Hakaku sovereignty, but you know what? We didn't know you took down Big Mom. You know, you should have told us that, Kid. You should have not used the railgun and told us that you beat Big Mom, man. And then he would have been welcome. Maybe that's it. I could see that being the case. And the person, funny enough, the person who would like Kid probably the most would be Elder Yarul. Like, Yarul lost his partner Yorul to Big Mom. If he learned that Kid was the one who took her down, maybe the Elder says, hey guys, we don't like Kid, I know it. You know, Doribarogi, you destroyed this guy's ship, but let me tell you, he got revenge for my fallen Nakama. Welcome him. I think that'd be decent. The problem with Kid being important in Elbaf, though, is that how would he even fit in? Right, like, minus the Big Mom stuff, with everything going on right now, how would Kid realistically fit in the story and not feel like baggage? You know, like a third wheel. You and your girl are going on a date and she says, hey, honey, Sarah wants to come. Sarah? What do you mean Sarah's coming? I'm trying to have sex afterwards. Is Sarah going to stick around for that too? I don't think so. Unless she joins in, then that'd be kind of crazy, right? W. But the thing is that let's say Kid does show up here. Is he going to fight Imu? Is he going to fight Killinghammer Sommers? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know what he'd do here. But the funny thing is that Kid, people memeing it all the time. People call it, you know, Timu Shien Conqueror's Haki, but he does have Conqueror's Haki. We've never seen it, but Kaido said he had it. It's in the Vivre cards. He has Conqueror's Haki. And the people we're going up against right now, they can only really be harmed with good Conqueror's Haki. So Kid, he could come in, he could be relevant, he could be impactful, but I don't know. You know, the problem with Kid is just that he hasn't displayed it yet. Luffy, Zoro, Scupper, all these guys who've displayed Conqueror's Haki, yeah. Like, I feel like they have more reason to be able to hurt the Holy Knights than Kid can. I mean, hell, you know, I'm vouching for Kid here, but I could even see Sanji getting Conqueror's Haki over a Kid using it against the Holy Knight and it working. Like, I know that's crazy to say, but I mean, dude, let's be real here, man. Kid is just, he has been dealt so many bad hands by Oda. It is sometimes hard to envision Kid getting a W somewhere, but I think it will come. And then another reason why I think he could be important in Elbaf is simply because that's where he lost. Right? Like, imagine this. Kid fought Shanks off the coast of Elbaf. He lost. He's sinking into the bottom of the sea because he has a devil fruit. So does Killer. How are they going to survive? We have no clue. Maybe they wash ashore like Big Mom and Wano. Maybe they wash ashore like the Straw Hats back on Fishman Island. I could see that happening. You know, because if Kid isn't here in Elbaf, where would he be realistically outside of this? Like, Elbaf is the nearest island. It was literally like a mile away from Kid's ship. So that is why I think he'll be here in Elbaf. You know, if Kid lost on a different island, then yeah, I wouldn't even consider Elbaf. But just because he's so close to it, that is where I tend to put him. But even then, like I said, it's hard to imagine what he would do on the island. But yeah, that is how I feel about this. You know, overall, I could see why people still think he's dead. I could see how people hate him, right? You know, Kid came in back in Sabaody during the pre-time skip with a force. 15 more million berries than Luffy's bounty. Kid, known as the killer captain, right? He had the Zoro parallel too. You know, Luffy and Zoro, 2 supernova, man. Crazy. Captain and swordsman. Kid had the same thing. You know, Kid was a monster. And then we got post-time skip Kid, and he just hasn't really done much. Okay, he's done much, right? I don't want to undersell the Big Mom stuff, but I think for the fan base, he just hasn't done enough, right? For how he was built up pre-time skip, he just hasn't done enough to really make fans like him. And I can't blame people, right? You know, I am a believer in different opinions. So while I feel this way about Kid, I can see why people do not like him. I can see why people don't even want him to have a big role. Kind of like how, going back up here, if people think Shanks is the #1 character, yeah, I could see that, right? The story is kind of set up in a way to kind of believe anything. You know, until we get like a chapter that displays, you know, powers to the fullest extent, yeah, anything's kind of possible. So now, we'll look at the one more poll, the last one. Okay, I lied. Dude, this video is going on for over an hour. Yeah, we're going to end it right here. We'll come back for some more polls later. Like I said, I might be dropping some Skypea polls. Let me see. No, we actually have a good amount. Yeah, that's a whole second video. Yeah. I forget how long we talk about these polls, man. But yeah, that is it for today's video, guys. Let me know what you thought about these poll results down below. Are you shocked? Are you appalled? Are you mad? Or do you agree with some of these? Or are you a fence sitter like myself? Ooh, the F word, huh? Fence sitter. That sounds so nasty. That sounds like derogatory. Hey, you fence sitter. But that's just how I am. You know, I like all these characters, brother. You know, until you put Dragon on the list, that's different. That's different. But even then, like I said, I still wish these characters the best. Even if I don't like them, I do wish them the best. But that's just how it is. I'm just easygoing, man. Let me know all your thoughts down below, and we'll be back in a few days with another poll video. I know, dude. Hey, it's a break week, man. It's a break week, and I'm just looking for any excuse to talk about One Piece. And hopefully you guys are too. You know, hopefully, you know, when you guys have your conversations down below, it's more civil. Like I said, man, my phone is on. Let me see. Not exactly any debates going on right now as far as the latest comment. But I've been seeing nothing but debates, brother. It's been popping up left and right, and it's crazy in the reply section. But anyways, hopefully you guys had a great time, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace out and have a great day, brother.